The morning sun cast long shadows across the abandoned cityscape as Elena Rodriguez crouched behind a collapsed concrete barrier. Her weathered combat boots pressed against the cracked asphalt. Every muscle in her body coiled and ready. Beside her, Ranger's ears twitched at sounds only he could detect. The German Shepherd's cybernetic left eye glowed faintly blue, scanning for thermal signatures that might indicate danger. 15 years had passed since the Zalari first descended from the stars. 15 years since Earth's governments fell within weeks, their advanced technology proving useless against weapons that seemed to bend reality itself. But humans had done what humans always did when faced with impossible odds. They adapted. They survived. They fought back with whatever they could find. Elena adjusted the worn strap of her salvaged pulse rifle and studied the terrain ahead. The industrial district stretched before them like a graveyard of human ambition. Twisted metal beams reached toward the sky like skeletal fingers, and weeds pushed through cracks in what had once been a thriving manufacturing hub. But it was perfect for their mission. Intelligence from the Resistance network indicated a Zalari supply convoy would pass through this area before noon. Elena and Ranger had been tracking enemy movements for 3 days, learning their patterns, identifying weaknesses. The aliens were efficient but predictable. They followed the same routes, maintained the same schedules, relied too heavily on their superior technology instead of adapting to guerrilla tactics. Ranger suddenly went rigid, his natural ear swiveling toward the east. Elena followed his gaze and spotted movement in the distance. A convoy of 3 Zalari transport vehicles glided silently above the broken roadway, their crystalline hulls reflecting the sunlight like mirrors. She raised her rifle and peered through the scope, counting occupants and noting weapon placements. The plan was simple. Wait for the convoy to pass the choke point between 2 collapsed buildings, then use the terrain to their advantage. Elena had rigged explosive charges along their expected route, carefully placed to maximize damage while providing multiple escape routes. It was the kind of asymmetric warfare that had kept the human resistance alive when conventional military forces had failed. But as Elena tracked the lead vehicle through her scope, something caught her attention. Beyond the convoy, perhaps 2 kilometers to the north, something metallic glinted among the ruins. She adjusted her scope's magnification and felt her breath catch in her throat. There, partially hidden by debris and overgrown vegetation, sat the unmistakable silhouette of a human military helicopter. The aircraft appeared intact, which was remarkable given the systematic destruction the Zalari had inflicted on all human military assets during the initial invasion. Most helicopters had been obliterated from orbit before they could even take off. This one must have been hidden or forgotten, somehow escaping the alien sensors that had tracked down and destroyed nearly every piece of advanced human technology. Elena's mind raced as she considered the implications. A working helicopter could change everything for their cell of the Resistance. Mobility, firepower, the ability to strike quickly and disappear before the Zalari could respond. But first she had a mission to complete. The convoy was approaching the kill zone. Elena activated the detonator sequence on her wrist device and settled her breathing. Ranger sensed the shift in her tension and moved into position, ready to provide covering fire with the modified weapon system mounted on his cybernetic harness. The dog had been wounded during a raid 2 years ago, and the Resistance medics had saved his life with salvaged alien technology. Now he was faster, stronger, and more dangerous than any natural animal had a right to be. The lead transport vehicle crossed the invisible line Elena had marked in her mind. She pressed the detonator. The explosion erupted in a chain reaction of fire and debris. The first vehicle's energy shields flared and failed under the concentrated blast, sending it tumbling end over end into a pile of twisted metal. The second vehicle swerved but couldn't avoid the secondary charges Elena had placed along the alternate routes. Its hull cracked open like an egg, spilling Zalari soldiers onto the ground. The third vehicle's pilot reacted quickly, pulling up and away from the ambush site. But Elena was ready. Her pulse rifle sent a stream of concentrated energy into the vehicle's exposed underside, exploiting a design flaw the Resistance had discovered months ago. The craft shuddered and began losing altitude, its pilot fighting to maintain control. Ranger was already moving, his enhanced legs carrying him across the broken terrain with inhuman speed. His weapon system locked onto the surviving Zalari soldiers, who were attempting to establish a defensive perimeter. The modified plasma cannon mounted on his back fired in controlled bursts, each shot precisely targeted to disable rather than kill. The Resistance needed prisoners for intelligence gathering. Elena provided overwatch, picking off any aliens who tried to flank her companion. The engagement lasted less than 3 minutes. When the smoke cleared, 2 Zalari lay unconscious, their weapons scattered and their vehicles destroyed. It was a clean operation, the kind that would force the aliens to divert resources to investigate while yielding valuable intelligence about their supply lines. But Elena's attention kept drifting to that helicopter in the distance. As soon as they secured the prisoners and gathered what intel they could from the wreckage, she was going to investigate. Something about the aircraft nagged at her. It was too intact, too perfectly positioned. After 15 years of constant warfare, nothing human remained untouched by accident. Ranger trotted back to her position, his cybernetic eye still glowing as it scanned for additional threats. Elena scratched behind his natural ear, a gesture that always seemed to calm both of them after combat. The dog's tail wagged once, a brief show of the animal he had been before the war changed everything. Together, they began the process of securing their prisoners and preparing for extraction. But Elena's mind was already racing ahead, wondering what secrets that abandoned helicopter might hold. In a war where every advantage mattered, even the smallest discovery could tip the balance. And something told her this discovery would be anything but small. 3 hours later, Elena and Ranger approached the helicopter through a maze of twisted metal and concrete debris. The Resistance extraction team had collected their prisoners and the salvaged Zalari technology, leaving Elena free to investigate her discovery. She moved carefully, aware that the aircraft could be booby-trapped or under surveillance by alien forces. The helicopter was a UH-60 Blackhawk, its dark green paint faded and scratched but remarkably intact. Vines had grown up around the landing gear and a thin layer of dust covered the cockpit windows, but there were no obvious signs of battle damage. Elena circled the aircraft twice, checking for any indication that the Zalari had found it first. Ranger's enhanced senses detected no immediate threats, but his cybernetic eye registered something unusual. The helicopter's metal skin showed traces of an energy signature he had never encountered before. Not Zalari technology, but something else entirely. He whined softly, alerting Elena to his concern. Elena approached the crew compartment door and tested the handle. To her surprise, it opened easily. The interior was dark, but her tactical flashlight revealed something extraordinary. The passenger compartment had been completely modified, filled with equipment that definitely wasn't standard military issue. Banks of computers lined both walls, their screens dark but showing no signs of damage. Strange crystalline formations grew from the ceiling like technological stalactites, connected to the computer systems by cables that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. But what truly caught Elena's attention was the pilot's seat. A human figure sat slumped over the controls wearing a flight suit she didn't recognize. The fabric seemed to shimmer with an oily, rainbow-like quality that reminded her uncomfortably of Zalari technology. But the cut and design were definitely human. Elena climbed into the aircraft, keeping her weapon ready. Ranger followed, his enhanced senses on high alert. The air inside smelled sterile, with an underlying ozone scent that made Elena's nose tingle. She approached the pilot cautiously and gently turned the figure's head. The face was human but wrong in subtle ways. The bone structure was familiar, but the skin had a translucent quality that revealed dark veins beneath the surface. The eyes were closed, but Elena could see movement behind the lids as if the person were dreaming. Most disturbing of all, thin cables ran from the base of the skull to a port in the pilot's seat, creating a direct connection between human and machine. Elena checked for a pulse and found one, slow but steady. The pilot was alive but unconscious, locked in some kind of technological coma. She searched the flight suit for identification and found a name patch that read, Chen, David, Project Prometheus. The rank insignia indicated a major, but the unit designation was nothing Elena recognized from her military service. Ranger had moved to investigate the computer systems. His cybernetic implants allowed him limited interface capability with electronic devices, a modification the Resistance had developed to help him scout enemy installations. As he connected to one of the terminals, information began flowing across the screens in languages and symbols Elena had never seen before. The first files that appeared contained detailed schematics of human technology, but technology far beyond anything Elena knew existed before the invasion. Fusion reactors the size of briefcases, weapons that could punch through Zalari shields, propulsion systems that seemed to violate the laws of physics. The timestamp on the files showed they had been created 3 years after the invasion began. Elena scrolled through more documents, her excitement growing with each discovery. Project Prometheus appeared to be a secret human research initiative, one that had somehow continued operating in the shadows long after Earth's governments fell. The researchers had been reverse engineering Zalari technology, but more than that, they had been improving upon it. One file contained video logs from Major Chen himself. Elena activated the playback and watched as the pilot's image appeared on screen, looking healthy and fully human. His voice was calm and professional, as he described test flights using hybrid propulsion systems and consciousness machine interface protocols. According to the logs, Chen had volunteered for an experimental procedure that would allow him to interface directly with advanced aircraft systems. The process involved integrating salvaged Zalari neural technology with human cybernetics, creating a pilot who could react with superhuman speed and intuition. But something had gone wrong during the final test flight. The last video entry showed Chen looking increasingly strained, his skin beginning to show the translucent quality Elena had observed. He spoke of temporal displacement effects and consciousness fragmentation, but insisted the project was too important to abandon. The log ended abruptly, with Chen strapped into the pilot seat and beginning the integration process. Elena realized she was looking at the result of that final experiment. Chen was still alive, but his consciousness was somehow distributed between his biological brain and the helicopter's computer systems. He had become part of the machine, gaining access to capabilities that no normal human pilot could achieve. But the files contained more than just Chen's personal transformation. The helicopter's computer core held the complete research database for Project Prometheus, including the locations of hidden research facilities, the identities of surviving scientists, and most importantly, the blueprints for weapons and defensive systems that could turn the tide of the war. Ranger's interface with the computer system triggered additional security protocols. The screens flickered and changed, displaying new information about the helicopter itself. The aircraft had been modified with Zalari human hybrid technology, giving it capabilities that defied conventional understanding. Stealth systems that could fool alien sensors, weapons that could penetrate their energy shields, and most remarkably, a consciousness-guided autopilot system that could outfly any normal aircraft. Elena felt her pulse quicken as she realized what they had discovered. This wasn't just a helicopter. It was a prototype for a new generation of human military technology, one that could give them a real chance against the Zalari occupation forces. But accessing that potential would require waking up Major Chen, and Elena had no idea what that process might cost. The sound of approaching aircraft interrupted her thoughts. Through the cockpit windows, she could see 3 Zalari reconnaissance drones converging on their position. Somehow their investigation had triggered the aliens' detection systems. Elena and Ranger had perhaps minutes before a full strike force arrived. But as the drones drew closer, something unexpected happened. The helicopter's systems began activating on their own. The crystalline formations in the passenger compartment started glowing with soft blue light, and the computer screens flickered to life without any input from Elena or Ranger. Major Chen's body remained motionless, but his lips moved silently, as if he were trying to speak. The aircraft's engines spun up with a sound unlike any helicopter Elena had ever heard, more like a musical tone than mechanical noise. The Zalari drones suddenly changed course, their sensors apparently unable to track the helicopter's new energy signature. Elena realized that Chen's consciousness, somehow distributed throughout the aircraft's systems, was actively defending them. She had a choice to make. Trust in this strange hybrid technology and whatever remained of Major Chen's humanity, or abandon the discovery and flee on foot. Looking at Ranger, she saw the same determination in his cybernetic eye that had kept them alive through 15 years of impossible odds. Elena strapped herself into the co-pilot seat and placed her hands on the controls. "Chen," she said aloud, hoping some part of him could still hear. "If you can understand me, we need your help. The Resistance needs what you've discovered here." The helicopter lifted off the ground with impossible smoothness, and Elena felt a presence touch her mind, alien yet unmistakably human. The presence in Elena's mind felt like warm sunlight breaking through storm clouds. It was definitely human, carrying emotions and memories that no alien consciousness could replicate. But it was also something more, expanded beyond the normal boundaries of individual thought. Elena could sense Chen's awareness flowing through every circuit and system of the aircraft, experiencing the world through sensors that could detect electromagnetic spectrums invisible to human eyes. Elena Rodriguez. The voice formed in her thoughts without sound, carrying undertones of relief and desperate hope. Resistance fighter, former Army Ranger, currently leader of Cell 7 in the Pacific Northwest Division. Your companion is designated Ranger, cybernetically enhanced with Zalari neural interfaces. You are both exactly what I have been waiting for. Elena gripped the co-pilot controls tighter, struggling to maintain her composure as the helicopter soared above the ruins of the city. Through the cockpit windows, she could see the Zalari drones circling in confusion, their sensors unable to lock onto their position. The aircraft's stealth systems were beyond anything human technology had achieved before the invasion. How do you know all that? Elena spoke aloud, unsure if Chen could hear her physical voice or only her thoughts. I have been monitoring resistance communications for 3 years, hoping to find someone with the right combination of skills and determination. Project Prometheus was never meant to be a solo operation. The technologies we developed require a team to reach their full potential. Ranger had moved to the equipment bay, his cybernetic interfaces automatically connecting with the aircraft's secondary systems. Through his enhanced senses, Elena could feel the dog's amazement as he accessed databases of information that redefined everything they thought they knew about the war. The helicopter banked smoothly toward the mountains, its flight path somehow avoiding every Zalari patrol and surveillance post along the way. Chen's distributed consciousness was guiding them through gaps in the alien coverage that should have been impossible to detect. But his expanded awareness made the enemy's weaknesses clearly visible. The Zalari made a fundamental error when they invaded Earth, Chen's mental voice continued. They assumed human technology was primitive because our weapons and defenses appeared simple compared to theirs. But they failed to understand our greatest advantage. Which is what? Elena asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Adaptation, improvisation, the willingness to sacrifice everything for an idea or a cause. They are individuals operating within rigid hierarchies, following predetermined patterns of behavior. But humans are something else entirely when we work together. The aircraft descended toward a hidden valley Elena had never seen before, despite operating in this region for over a decade. A camouflaged facility emerged from what had appeared to be natural rock formations, its entrance opening in response to signals from the helicopter's systems. Elena realized this was one of the secret Project Prometheus research stations, somehow hidden from Zalari detection for years. As they landed, Elena could see figures emerging from the facility. At first glance, they appeared to be normal humans, but as they drew closer, she noticed the same subtle modifications she had observed in Chen. Translucent skin, enhanced bone structure, and the telltale cables that indicated direct neural interface capability. They were all volunteers who had undergone the consciousness expansion process. We call ourselves the Synthesis, Chen explained as the aircraft's engines wound down. Humans who have integrated with advanced technology, while maintaining our essential humanity. We are still individuals, but we can also function as a collective when necessary. It allows us to coordinate in ways the Zalari cannot predict or counter. Elena and Ranger disembarked from the helicopter, immediately surrounded by the enhanced humans. But their approach felt welcoming rather than threatening. Elena could sense their genuine excitement at meeting new potential allies, and their desperate hope that the resistance might finally be ready to take the next step in the war. Dr. Sarah Martinez approached them first, her appearance more dramatically altered than Chen's had been. Her eyes glowed with soft blue light, and fiber-optic cables were woven through her hair like technological jewelry. But her smile was warm and entirely human as she extended her hand to Elena. "Welcome to Prometheus Base," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated through the air like music. "We have been waiting for you for a very long time." Elena shook the offered hand, surprised by its warmth and normal texture despite its strange appearance. "Waiting for me specifically or just anyone from the Resistance?" "You specifically," Dr. Martinez replied. "Chen's expanded consciousness has been monitoring Resistance communications and identifying individuals with the psychological profile necessary for integration with our technology. You and Ranger both demonstrate the kind of adaptive thinking and emotional resilience required for the next phase of human evolution." Ranger moved closer to Elena, his cybernetic eye interfacing with the facility's external sensors. The information he was receiving painted a picture of a research installation that was far more advanced than anything the Resistance had imagined possible. Underground laboratories, manufacturing facilities, and living quarters for nearly 200 enhanced humans, all working toward a single goal. What exactly is the next phase? Elena asked, though part of her already suspected the answer would change everything about how she viewed the war. Dr. Martinez gestured toward the facility entrance. Come inside and we'll show you. But I should warn you, once you see what we've accomplished, there will be no going back to conventional resistance operations. The choice you make today will determine not just your own future, but the future of the entire human species. As they walked toward the hidden entrance, Elena could feel Chen's consciousness still connected to her thoughts, offering reassurance and encouragement. The pilot's physical body remained in the helicopter, but his awareness was everywhere at once, monitoring their conversation and the facility's security system simultaneously. The integration process is voluntary, Chen explained, but once you begin, you will become something more than human while remaining essentially yourself. You will gain access to capabilities that make our current resistance efforts look like children playing with toys, but you will also accept responsibility for preserving human consciousness and culture against forces that want to erase us completely. Elena paused at the threshold of the facility, understanding that crossing it would represent a point of no return. Behind her lay 15 years of guerrilla warfare, small victories against impossible odds, and the gradual erosion of human civilization. Ahead lay transformation into something unprecedented, the possibility of real victory against the Zalari, but also unknown risks and responsibilities. Ranger looked up at her with his mismatched eyes, one natural and one cybernetic, already partially bridging the gap between biological and technological existence. His tail wagged once, a simple gesture that somehow conveyed complete trust in whatever decision she made. Elena took a deep breath and stepped through the entrance. The war was about to change, and humanity was about to discover what it truly meant to adapt and overcome. But first, she needed to understand exactly what the synthesis had learned about their enemies, and what weapons they had developed to finally drive the invaders from Earth. The corridor beyond the entrance stretched deeper into the mountain than seemed possible, lined with technologies that blended human engineering with alien principles in ways that created entirely new possibilities. Helena's pulse quickened as she realized she was looking at humanity's secret weapon, hidden in plain sight for 3 years, while the Resistance fought a conventional war they could never win. The time for conventional warfare was ending. The age of human synthesis was about to begin. The main laboratory of Prometheus Base defied everything Elena thought she knew about the limits of human technology. Holographic displays showed 3-dimensional models of Zalari ships and weapons systems, their every weakness highlighted in red. Banks of quantum computers processed information at speeds that made conventional electronics look like clockwork toys. And everywhere the enhanced humans of the synthesis worked with fluid coordination that reminded Elena of a perfectly choreographed dance. Dr. Martinez led Elena and Ranger to a central observation platform that overlooked the entire operation. Before we can offer you integration into the synthesis, she said, you need to understand exactly what we're fighting against. The Zalari invasion wasn't random conquest. It was something much more specific and far more terrifying. The holographic displays shifted to show a detailed map of the galaxy, with thousands of star systems marked in different colors. Elena's breath caught as she realized the scale of what she was seeing. Red markers indicated Zalari-controlled systems, and there were hundreds of them, stretching across a significant portion of the galactic spiral arm. The Zalari have been expanding for over 2,000 years, Dr. Martinez explained, but they're not an empire in any conventional sense. They're something more like a virus that spreads from world to world, consuming unique forms of consciousness and adding them to their collective knowledge base. Elena studied the display more carefully and noticed something disturbing. In each conquered system, the original inhabitants had been marked with different symbols. Most showed integration symbols, indicating the species had been absorbed into the Zalari collective, but a significant number showed termination markers. They don't just conquer, Elena realized. They evaluate. Some species get absorbed, others get eliminated entirely. Exactly, Dr. Martinez confirmed. And the determining factor isn't military strength or technological advancement. It's something the Zalari call consciousness compatibility. Species that think in patterns similar to their own get integrated. Species that demonstrate fundamentally different approaches to existence get wiped out completely. Ranger's cybernetic interface connected with the display system, allowing him to process the tactical information at enhanced speeds. Through their neural link, Elena could sense his growing understanding of the true scope of the threat. The Zalari weren't just occupying Earth, they were conducting a systematic evaluation of human consciousness, deciding whether humanity deserved to survive or should be eliminated as incompatible with their vision of galactic order. Chen's consciousness touched Elena's mind again, sharing memories from his 3 years of expanded awareness. She experienced fragments of intercepted Zalari communications, their cold analysis of human behavior patterns, their growing frustration with humanity's refusal to follow predictable response protocols. They expected us to surrender or fight conventionally, Chen explained. When our governments fell, they anticipated either complete submission or organized military resistance that they could systematically destroy. But humans kept doing things that their models couldn't predict. Guerrilla warfare, civilian resistance, the willingness to sacrifice individual lives for abstract principles. We confused them. Dr. Martinez activated another display showing detailed psychological profiles that the Zalari had compiled on human behavior. The alien analysis was coldly clinical, but also revealing in what it failed to understand. They had cataloged human adaptability as a form of chaos rather than recognizing it as a strength. They viewed human emotional bonds as weakness rather than understanding how those connections created resilience and motivation that transcended individual survival instincts. This is why Project Prometheus was started, Dr. Martinez continued. We realized that fighting the Zalari with conventional weapons would never work. They have superior technology and numerical advantages, but they also have a fundamental blind spot. They cannot understand or predict consciousness patterns that operate outside their rigid hierarchical model. The enhanced humans working in the laboratory moved with purpose that seemed almost telepathic. Elena watched them coordinate complex tasks without verbal communication, their neural interfaces allowing them to share information and intentions at the speed of thought. But unlike the Zalari collective model, each individual maintained their distinct personality and decision-making autonomy. The consciousness expansion process doesn't eliminate individuality, Dr. Martinez explained, noticing Elena's observation. It enhances our ability to connect and coordinate while preserving the creative chaos that makes human thinking so unpredictable. We become more than the sum of our parts without losing what makes us distinctly human. Elena studied the profiles of other resistance cells displayed on the holographic screens. She was shocked to discover how many operations had been quietly supported by Prometheus Base over the past 3 years. Supplies appearing in hidden caches, intelligence about Zalari movements, technological upgrades to resistance equipment. The synthesis had been helping the conventional resistance while developing their own capabilities in secret. Why reveal yourselves now? Elena asked. Why not continue operating from the shadows? Chen's consciousness provided the answer through a series of shared memories. Elena saw intercepted Zalari communications indicating that their evaluation of humanity was entering its final phase. The aliens had grown tired of the prolonged resistance and were preparing to implement what they called the Terminal Assessment Protocol. They're going to sterilize the planet, Elena said. The words coming out as barely a whisper. All of it. Complete elimination of human consciousness. Dr. Martinez nodded grimly. Our intelligence indicates they'll begin the process within 6 months. Atmospheric toxins designed to cause neural degeneration, followed by systematic destruction of all human settlements. They've concluded that human consciousness is fundamentally incompatible with their galactic order. But as Elena processed this devastating information, she noticed something else in the displays. Hidden among the tactical data were weapon specifications and ship designs that looked far more advanced than anything the Resistance had ever imagined. The synthesis hadn't just been studying Zalari technology, they had been improving upon it in ways that the aliens would never expect. Show me what you've built, Elena said, her voice carrying the steel determination that had kept her alive through 15 years of warfare. Dr. Martinez smiled, and for the first time Elena saw something that looked like hope in her enhanced features. Ranger, Would you like to see what Earth's children can accomplish when we stop fighting separately and start working together? The dog's cybernetic eye flared brighter as he interfaced more deeply with the facility's systems. Through their connection, Elena felt his amazement as he accessed specifications for weapons that could punch through Zalari shields, ships that could outmaneuver alien fighters, and defensive systems that could protect entire cities from orbital bombardment. But the most impressive development wasn't any single piece of technology. It was the integration system itself. The synthesis had created a way for enhanced humans to merge their consciousness temporarily during combat, creating temporary collective intelligences that could process tactical information and coordinate responses faster than any individual mind, human or alien. We can beat them, Elena realized, the certainty flooding through her like electricity. Not just survive or resist, actually drive them out completely. Yes, Dr. Martinez confirmed, but only if we can expand the synthesis rapidly enough to field sufficient forces before they implement the terminal assessment protocol. And that means convincing resistance leaders like yourself to take the ultimate leap of faith. Elena looked down at Ranger, who was still processing the incredible scope of what they had discovered. His tail wagged once, the same gesture of trust he had shown at the facility entrance. She thought about her resistance cell, the men and women who had followed her through impossible missions, trusting her judgment even when victory seemed hopeless. What does the integration process involve? She asked, though part of her had already made the decision. And how long do we have to prepare for what's coming? Dr. Martinez gestured toward a medical bay visible through reinforced windows. The consciousness expansion takes approximately 72 hours. Physical modifications are minimal, but the mental changes are profound. You'll maintain your individuality and memories, but you'll also gain access to shared knowledge and coordination capabilities that will redefine your understanding of what humans can accomplish. Elena took a deep breath, understanding that the next few words would change not just her own destiny, but the fate of her entire species. The war for Earth's survival was about to enter its final phase, and humanity's secret weapon was finally ready to be revealed. Elena lay in the integration chamber, her body surrounded by a web of fiber optic cables and neural interface nodes that hummed with barely contained energy. The process had begun 12 hours ago, and her consciousness was slowly expanding beyond the familiar boundaries of individual thought. Ranger rested beside the chamber, his own integration running parallel to hers, their bond deepening as both of their minds opened to new possibilities. Dr. Martinez monitored their progress from a control station that looked more like an art installation than medical equipment. Crystalline formations grew from the walls, pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that somehow helped regulate the consciousness expansion process. Every few minutes she would adjust the neural flow patterns, fine-tuning the integration to match Elena and Ranger's unique psychological profiles. The first phase is always the most difficult. Chen's consciousness touched Elena's expanding awareness. Your mind is learning to exist in multiple states simultaneously, individual, connected, and something entirely new that emerges from the intersection of biological and technological consciousness. Elena could feel the change happening in layers. Her basic personality and memories remained intact, but new capabilities were slowly coming online. She could sense the emotional states of the other synthesis members throughout the facility, not as intrusion, but as a gentle background awareness that felt surprisingly natural. More importantly, she was beginning to understand the quantum information processing that would allow her to coordinate with other enhanced humans during combat operations. The technical specifications she had seen in the laboratory were no longer abstract concepts. Elena could now comprehend the weapon systems and tactical protocols at a fundamental level, understanding not just how they worked, but how to improvise and adapt them in real-time combat situations. Her consciousness was becoming a bridge between human intuition and technological precision. Ranger's integration was proceeding even more smoothly than her own. His existing cybernetic modifications had prepared his nervous system for the expansion process, and his canine instincts were adapting to enhanced capabilities with remarkable ease. Elena could feel his joy as he discovered he could now interface directly with any electronic system, his loyalty and protective instincts amplified by processing power that rivaled advanced computers. Through the neural link, Elena experienced memories that weren't her own. She saw the early days of Project Prometheus, when the first volunteers had undergone consciousness expansion with crude equipment and incomplete understanding of the process. Many had died or suffered permanent psychological damage. Others had emerged transformed but traumatized by the experience of existing between human and machine consciousness. But each failure had taught the researchers something new about the delicate balance required for successful integration. The current process was the result of 3 years of refinement, incorporating not just human medical knowledge but also principles reverse-engineered from Zalari consciousness transfer technology. The aliens had perfected techniques for preserving individual awareness during technological integration, but they had never imagined those techniques being used to enhance rather than subsume individual consciousness. The Zalari model requires submission to collective authority, Dr. Martinez explained through the neural link. Their integration process is designed to eliminate individual decision-making capability, but humans have developed something unprecedented. We can share consciousness temporarily while maintaining our autonomy permanently. Elena felt the truth of that statement as her awareness touched the minds of other synthesis members. She could access their knowledge and coordinate with their actions, but she could also withdraw into complete mental privacy whenever she chose. The integration didn't create a hive mind. It created a network of enhanced individuals who could function as a collective when necessary, while preserving the creative independence that made human consciousness unique. The second day of integration brought more profound changes. Elena's perception of time and space began to shift as her consciousness learned to process information at superhuman speeds. She could think through complex tactical scenarios in seconds, exploring hundreds of potential outcomes and identifying optimal strategies faster than any conventional military planning could achieve. But the most remarkable development was her growing understanding of the Zalari themselves. Through shared memories from Chen and other synthesis members who had encountered the aliens directly, Elena began to perceive the enemy's fundamental weakness. The Zalari were incredibly advanced, but they were also rigid in their thinking patterns. They could adapt their technology rapidly, but they couldn't adapt their basic assumptions about how consciousness should function. They expected intelligent species to organize hierarchically, with clear chains of command and predictable response patterns. Human resistance had confused them precisely because it operated outside those parameters. Individual humans made decisions based on emotional bonds, moral principles, and intuitive leaps that the Zalari consciousness models couldn't predict or counter. This is why the synthesis is so dangerous to them, Chen explained. We combine human unpredictability with technological capabilities that rival their own. They have no models for understanding how we think or predicting how we will act. On the final day of integration, Elena experienced the emergence of what Dr. Martinez called quantum consciousness. Her awareness could now exist in multiple states simultaneously, processing different streams of information while maintaining coherent individual identity. She could think like a human, calculate like a computer, and coordinate with other minds like a member of a collective, all at the same time. The integration chamber opened with a soft hiss of escaping atmosphere, and Elena sat up slowly, marveling at how different everything looked through her enhanced perception. The walls of the facility weren't just metal and ceramic anymore. She could see the electromagnetic patterns flowing through the cables, the quantum fluctuations in the air itself, the complex information networks that connected every system in the base. Ranger bounded out of his chamber with obvious excitement, his cybernetic eye now complemented by fiber optic threads woven through his fur like silver highlights. His tail wagged furiously as he tested his new capabilities, interfacing with multiple systems simultaneously while maintaining his essential canine enthusiasm. Elena stood and immediately felt the difference in her physical capabilities. Her enhanced nervous system allowed perfect balance and coordination, while her expanded consciousness could process sensory information from sources throughout the facility. She wasn't just Elena Rodriguez anymore. She was Elena Rodriguez amplified, connected, and prepared for possibilities she had never imagined. Dr. Martinez approached them with a smile that seemed to glow with inner light. "Welcome to the synthesis," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated directly with Elena's enhanced auditory processing. "How do you feel?" "Different," Elena replied, then paused as she realized she could perceive the emotional undertones in her own voice with unprecedented clarity. "But still myself. More myself in some ways." Through the neural network, Elena could sense the excitement of the other synthesis members throughout the facility. Her successful integration represented something significant. As a proven resistance leader with strong connections to conventional human forces, she could serve as a bridge between the synthesis and the broader human population. Chen's consciousness touched her mind with what felt like relief and gratitude. You and Ranger represent the next phase of our development. We have the technology to fight the Zalari effectively, but we need to expand our numbers rapidly. Your experience with resistance operations will be invaluable for coordinating the transition. Elena accessed the facility's strategic databases through her neural interface, reviewing the current tactical situation with her enhanced processing capabilities. What she discovered was both encouraging and terrifying. The synthesis had developed weapons and defensive systems that could effectively counter Zalari technology, but their numbers were still too small to mount a planet-wide resistance effort. Meanwhile, Zalari forces were beginning to implement preliminary phases of the Terminal Assessment Protocol. Atmospheric monitoring stations were detecting trace amounts of neural toxins in several major population centers, and alien fleet movement suggested they were positioning for a systematic sterilization campaign. We have perhaps 4 months before they begin the final phase, Elena said, her enhanced consciousness calculating probabilities and resource requirements with machine-like precision, while her human intuition identified critical decision points. How many people can we integrate in that time? Dr. Martinez shared tactical projections through the neural network. With our current facilities, perhaps 2,000 individuals. But we're also preparing mobile integration units that can be deployed to resistance cells throughout the world. The process is inherently risky when performed outside controlled conditions, but the alternative is the extinction of human consciousness. 3 months later, Elena stood on the command deck of the newly constructed orbital station that humanity had designated New Prometheus. Through the reinforced viewport, she could see the Zalari fleet approaching Earth in perfect geometric formation, their crystalline ships reflecting starlight like a constellation of deadly jewels. But for the first time since the invasion began, Elena felt confident rather than afraid. The integration process had succeeded beyond every projection. Over 8,000 humans had undergone consciousness expansion, creating a network of enhanced individuals that spanned the globe. More importantly, the synthesis had managed to maintain the essential human characteristics that made their tactics unpredictable to alien analysis. They were still individuals, still capable of surprising themselves and their enemies. Ranger moved through the station's corridors with fluid grace, his enhanced capabilities allowing him to coordinate defensive systems while maintaining his essential canine nature. His loyalty had expanded from Elena alone to encompass all of humanity, but it retained the fierce personal devotion that had kept them both alive through 15 years of warfare. The Zalari have committed their entire regional fleet to the Terminal Assessment Protocol. Chen's consciousness reported through the neural network. His awareness had expanded to encompass multiple spacecraft, allowing him to monitor enemy movements across the entire solar system. They are confident that human resistance has reached its maximum potential and can be eliminated through overwhelming force. Elena smiled as she accessed tactical data from synthesis forces positioned throughout the solar system. The aliens had indeed reached that conclusion, but they had based their assessment on outdated information. They expected to face the same guerrilla resistance that had harassed them for 15 years. Not a transformed humanity that could match their technology, while retaining the creative chaos that had always been their greatest strength. Dr. Martinez appeared beside Elena, her enhanced form now more obviously modified than during their first meeting. Fiber optic networks pulsed visibly beneath her translucent skin, and her eyes had become multifaceted like gemstones, allowing her to process visual information across multiple spectrums simultaneously. But her smile remained warmly human as she prepared for humanity's final gambit. All synthesis forces report ready, she announced, through both voice and neural link. Integration teams have successfully enhanced 12 resistance cells in the past week alone. We have enough coordinated consciousness to implement the Phoenix Protocol. Elena felt a moment of awe as she contemplated what they were about to attempt. The Phoenix Protocol was the most ambitious plan in human history, requiring precise coordination between thousands of enhanced individuals operating across multiple planets and spacecraft simultaneously. It would either secure humanity's freedom or result in their complete annihilation. The Zalari fleet had assumed standard orbital bombardment positions, preparing to deploy atmospheric toxins that would destroy human neural tissue while leaving the planet's infrastructure intact for future colonization. But they had positioned themselves exactly where the synthesis had hoped they would, following predictable tactical doctrines that assumed human resistance would be concentrated on Earth's surface. Initiating consciousness merge, Elena announced through the neural network. All synthesis members prepare for collective coordination. The experience of merging with 8,000 enhanced human minds was like diving into an ocean of shared awareness. Elena maintained her individual identity, but she could also access the knowledge, skills, and perspectives of every other synthesis member simultaneously. Tactical information flowed between minds at the speed of thought, creating a collective intelligence that could process combat scenarios faster than any computer. But unlike the Zalari collective model, the merged consciousness retained the creative unpredictability that made human thinking unique. Individual insights and innovations could spread through the network instantly, allowing for real-time adaptation and improvisation that no rigid hierarchy could match. The first phase of the Phoenix Protocol activated hidden weapon systems that the synthesis had been positioning for months. Asteroid mining stations throughout the solar system revealed themselves to be heavily armed fortresses, their quantum cannons targeting Zalari command ships with precision that defied conventional physics. Space elevators on Earth transformed into massive railguns, launching projectiles at relativistic speeds toward enemy formations. But the real surprise was the revelation that dozens of seemingly destroyed human spacecraft had actually been converted into stealth platforms. Ships that the Zalari believed they had eliminated years ago suddenly materialized throughout their fleet formation, their hybrid human-alien technology allowing them to appear directly behind enemy shields. The Zalari are attempting to adapt their formations, Ranger reported through the neural link, his enhanced perception tracking the enemy's response patterns. But their command structure cannot process simultaneous threats from multiple sources fast enough to mount effective countermeasures. Elena felt savage satisfaction as she watched the alien fleet struggle to respond to coordinated attacks that came from every direction at once. The Zalari had spent centuries perfecting tactics for defeating conventionally organized military forces, but they had no protocols for fighting an enemy that could think collectively while acting individually. Chen's consciousness guided the modified Black Hawk helicopter and dozens of similar hybrid aircraft through the orbital battle, their enhanced pilots moving with superhuman coordination while maintaining the intuitive flexibility that made human tactics so effective. Each ship operated independently, but they also functioned as components of a larger strategic plan that adapted continuously to changing battlefield conditions. The second phase of the Phoenix Protocol targeted the Zalari's fundamental weakness. The aliens relied on quantum communication networks to coordinate their far-flung empire, but those networks assumed all participating consciousnesses would follow predictable patterns of behavior. The synthesis had developed virus programs based on human psychological patterns, digital infections that spread through alien systems like cognitive chaos. Elena watched through multiple simultaneous viewpoints as Zalari command. Ships began experiencing system failures that their technicians couldn't understand or repair. The virus programs weren't destroying hardware. They were introducing human-style random variables into decision-making processes that had been designed for absolute logical consistency. Their command hierarchy is fragmenting, Dr. Martinez reported with obvious satisfaction. Individual ship commanders are receiving contradictory orders from infected command systems. They're losing fleet cohesion. But the true genius of the Phoenix Protocol wasn't any single weapon or tactic. It was the demonstration of human potential that had been hidden from Zalari analysis for 3 years. The aliens had evaluated human consciousness based on pre-integration capabilities, never imagining that humans could evolve beyond their initial parameters while retaining their essential nature. As the battle reached its climax, Elena felt the collective consciousness of the synthesis touch something larger than themselves. Every enhanced human in the network was contributing their unique perspective to a shared understanding that transcended individual limitations. They were becoming something unprecedented in galactic history, a species that could function as both individuals and a collective. maintaining creative chaos while achieving perfect coordination. The Zalari fleet began withdrawing from Earth's orbital space, their formations broken and their command structure compromised. But Elena knew this was only the beginning. The aliens would return with new strategies and technologies designed to counter what they had learned about human capabilities. Let them come. Elena thought through the neural network, her consciousness touching every other member of the synthesis simultaneously. We are no longer the species they invaded 15 years ago. We have become something they cannot understand, predict, or defeat. We are humanity enhanced, and we will never surrender. Ranger's tail wagged with fierce joy as he sensed Elena's determination through their enhanced bond. Around them, the orbital station hummed with activity as 8,000 enhanced humans began planning for the next phase of Earth's liberation. The war wasn't over, but for the first time since the invasion began, humanity was fighting with their true potential unleashed. The Zalari had wanted to eliminate human consciousness as incompatible with galactic order. Instead, they had forced humanity to evolve into something that would reshape the galaxy itself. The age of human expansion was about to begin, and the universe would never be the same.